Hello, this is Jennifer Marshall, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make a starter from scratch. I have had a lot of requests asking how to make a starter from using just basic flours like whole wheat flour and white bread flour. So, as I promised to many of the members on Splendid Sourdough, I am going to be recording a video on a day-by-day basis and make a starter from scratch as well to show you how to get a starter active, and so hopefully we can learn something all together. So basically the idea is this, that we can actually capture yeasts. We are breathing yeast in our air all the time, various different types of yeasts, which we can capture by using basic flours like white bread flour and also whole wheat flour. However, if you don't have whole wheat flour, or if you, for example, would like to use a different type of flour, this will work with any type of flour. So, for example, if you have spelt flour, or for example, if you have you would like to use white flour and spelt, or white flour and something else, or for example, just any other flour that you need, then it is fine to use it, because what we're doing is basically capturing yeasts from our air and let the mixture of flour and water ferment over a few days, so it makes our starter basically. Okay, so here what I've prepared is I've prepared two very basic flours which we can always find in our stores, in our grocery stores, and most probably we all have them in our pantry, so it's very easy to start. I have 50 grams of white flour and 50 grams of whole wheat. With regards to measurements, I always say that it's very, very important to have a measuring scale, even when measuring the water. Rather than going with milliliters, it's better to measure your water. This is quite important. And I have chosen to add 50 grams of each flour. That's my choice. You can, for example, add less. For example, 30 grams of each. You can have 60 grams. So it is really, in a way, your choice. But it is quite nice to keep an easy number and something that is very easy to remember, kind of. And the other thing is the container. That's one thing I'd like to speak to you about, because when I do my sourdough online classes, I notice that when I help people do their sourdough starter, sometimes they have big bowls where they put their starter, and this does not allow the starter to really activate. So I prefer to have a long, narrow jar, for example, which helps the starter when it's ready to rise. It helps it to go up, rather than if you have a bowl, if you have a bigger surface area, it is not as easy to get the starter going. So I'm going to be using this jar, and also this helps me because actually I can see where my starter was sitting at. I'll show you what I mean by that. So in this case, I'm going to be adding 50 grams of my, I've already weighed them by the way, 50 grams of my white bread flour and 50 grams of brown flour or whole wheat flour. Here we are. And to this mixture, I'm going to just empty all my white flour because I still have some left. To this mixture, I'm going to add basically 100 grams, because obviously it's 50 plus 50, 100 grams, and equal amounts of water. The ratio is equal amounts of water to flour. If you'd like, sometimes I prefer to have a little bit less water, just so that the consistency of my sourdough starter is slightly thicker. Rather than too liquidy, it will be slightly thicker. So I'm adding 100 grams of water to my flours. And this water should not be too cold and shouldn't be too hot. So tepid temperature, a good easy temperature, to, you know, just a good temperature. I'm going to add all the water. And basically we give it a good mix. So we make sure that none of the flours are not mixed, so everything is mixed. There are no particles in there. And the texture of the sourdough starter, of my starter, should be like a thick yogurt or like mud, basically. So a bit thick, and this also helps so that gases don't come out as quickly. If it was too liquidy, then we will have a little bit of a harder time to get it to ferment, and this is the reason. Okay, so I have it really, really well mixed. I try not to touch it with my hands so that I don't hand over or give any of my own microbes that I have on my hands. So I leave it as clean as possible. And here I've got the mixture of my white flour and brown flour. However, as I said, if, for example, you wanted to use spelt flour or any other flour, you can also do that. Now, the thing is this, that we are creating something that's eventually going to be alive. And so in order for something to be alive, it has to breathe. And therefore, we cannot completely lock it. We can't completely take off its oxygen. So the best way to do it is to cover it with a cloth. I've got a cloth here, which I will place on my jar. And I will leave it on the kitchen counter. This will be fermenting for many hours, basically overnight, at least 8 to 10 hours. And if you have a look at it after about 8 hours, let's say, you will already see a change in its texture. You will see that perhaps there might be some liquid on top, or that it's kind of gotten a little bit more liquidy, even as the texture will not be as thick as this, but because fermentation already starts taking place at its very, very early stages. So the way to do it now is to just basically let it sit, let it ferment, and be patient. And tomorrow I will come back, I will show you what my starter is doing, how it has behaved, and whether I have any activity. Most probably I will have no activity, no bubbles, no nothing. It is way too early. But I will keep it in my pantry overnight. And my temperature in the pantry is about 23 degrees, I think. So it's a nice temperature. Our ambient temperature is getting warm. The temperature outside is getting warm, which means that our starter eventually will actually activate a little bit faster. If this were winter time, then there probably would be a slower rate of fermentation. But, you know, so fermentation takes place according to what its ambient temperature and how well we take care of it. That's the response we get from it, is how well we take care of it. And it's important to cover it with a cloth and not place it in the fridge at this stage. It's too early. So it's very important to place it on a kitchen counter or the pantry. And tomorrow we have to feed it again. So in the first few days, we must feed it on a daily basis to get fermentation really going. I hope this little video helps with getting you all started with your sourdough starter. And if you do have any questions, do send me a message or comment on the post below. Take care.